the source of our essence should first and foremost primarily come from God, okay? That's why also in Buddhism, the principles are non-attachment and impermanence. Non-attachment to things on the material realm, and impermanence because things on the 3D realm, they're not permanent. They come and go. It's not sustainable. So we shouldn't attach to anything on the 3D realm. Hi guys, so today I wanted to share with you a download that I received sometime in January. It was a lot of information coming to me at once, and I tried to condense it all into this chart right here. A few things that I wanted to point out that are interesting about this are that I didn't know that half of this already existed, okay? Now what I mean by that is that this is largely based off the Hawkins scale of consciousness, and the download that I got was that the scale of consciousness is a fractal of the scale of dimensions, and that the ego is a gateway to either heaven or hell, okay? Now, I was explaining this to a friend of mine at the gym, and I pulled up the version of the chart that I usually refer to that states that has the scale of consciousnesses, okay? And they kept on scrolling on Google Images, and they pulled up another version of the chart, and it showed the associated dimensions. And I was just mind blown, because it just goes to show that there is really no new thing under the sun. Everything that is, was, will be already exists within the quantum field, and whenever we're ready to receive information, the information comes. It's like whenever the student's ready, the teacher appears, okay? So I just found that that was really interesting, and I'm not claiming that this is going to be like groundbreaking information or anything like that, but this is what came to me, and it's helped me put a lot of things into perspective, and it has helped me. So I hope that it helps you as well, okay? I'm gonna do a split screen. I'm gonna walk you guys through my little rendition of the chart here. And without further ado, here I go. Now, what I want you guys to be familiarized with first is the first Hermetic principle, which states that the all is the mind, the universe is mental. When the Hermetics are referring to mental or mind, they're referring to the mind or the consciousness of God. Now, everything exists within the consciousness of God, and because we were made in his image to a certain capacity, we also have the ability to create our realities, our universes within our own consciousness, okay? Heaven and hell is a state of mind, our mind or the mind of God, okay? So if we look at my rendition of this scale, on this side I listed some states of consciousness, and on this side are some dimensions. Now, according to the Hawkins scale of consciousness, different states of consciousness can be measured by certain wavelengths, and the lower you go in states of consciousnesses, and the lower you go in states of consciousness, we can exchange the word consciousness for emotions, but the lower you go in that scale, the tighter, the more compressed the wavelengths are. That's why certain emotions feel really heavy, right? And if you correlate that with the lower dimensions, the lower you go on the scale of dimensions, the more limited the metric is. So for example, 1D is length, 2D is length width, 3D is length width height, 4D is length width height time. And as you ascend in dimensions, the less limited the metric. So think of it as you go up, you expand. As you go down, you contract. As you go up, things become more united, and as you go down, the illusion of separation becomes more apparent, okay? Now, when I say that ego is the gateway to either heaven or hell, it's because of the following. So when we are viewing the world from our ego's perspective, usually the ego, if left unchecked, it forms an over-identification or an attachment to things on the 3D realm, on the material realm, okay? What are things in the material realm? We usually think about objects. We think about cars, money, purses, houses, literal objects, but it also includes certain mentalities that we have, the stories we tell ourselves, past traumas, ideas about who we are in correlation to other people, our job titles, status, religion. All of these man-made concepts or constructs that exist within the material realm can fall under the umbrella of materialism, okay? And we see manifestations of hell in both the micro and the macro because of these attachments. For example, in the micro, within our households, we have distress amongst family members, right? So if somebody disrupts or threatens our ego, we feel guilt, shame, anger, resentment, etc., right? Within our households. If you multiply that by the collective, there's things like war, right? Why are wars fought? Because of religion and money, right? Religion is probably the most primal, most primitive sense of identification that a society can have. And we literally go to war to defend our idea, our identification with our God, right? And I don't think that that is God's intention for people getting to know him. That's kind of counterintuitive, but because of ego, because of our attachment to this identity, we fight war, which just doesn't make sense. We see other manifestations of hell in child labor, in the mountains of clothing that there are in Ghana. There's literally islands of plastic in our ocean. We treat each other with so much brutality. And we have complete disregard and disrespect for Mother Earth because of this consumerism, this overconsumption, this attachment to material things, right? Now, I'm not saying that the pursuit of material things is necessarily a bad thing. I'm not saying that the desire for wealth, money, status, cars, whatever is inherently bad. I'm saying that the attachment to these things is bad. And I think that that's why in the Bible, for example, the first commandment is literally, thou shalt not put any gods before me. And what I think was meant by that is that we shouldn't identify and we shouldn't place value on anything before God, or we shouldn't place anything above God. We shouldn't make anything more important than God. Our value, our life force, the source of our essence should first and foremost primarily come from God, okay? That's why also in Buddhism, the principles are non-attachment and impermanence. Non-attachment to things on the material realm, and impermanence because things on the 3D realm, they're not permanent. They come and go. It's not sustainable. So we shouldn't attach to anything on the 3D realm. Is that it? So the invite here is basically to try to always operate in higher states of consciousness. I don't think that we'll ever be able to reach God level, but we should try to emulate what God is, which is unconditional love, the transcendence of duality. I think that if we live on the third dimension, or dimension to the third power, God is dimension to the infinite power, but I don't even want to confine him to dimensions, because I think that he is so vast that our minds will never be able to conceptualize just how vast God is. But God is unconditional love. And you can't get to unconditional love unless you've transcended conditions. He's transcended any notion of duality. Everything that is both good and bad, all states of consciousness exist within God's universe or God's creation. And I drew this yin yang symbol here because it kind of depicts duality, and I think that God is like outside of duality. He's transcended duality. And I think that when good or bad things happen to us, it's up to us to transmute or alchemize things that we perceive as bad with love and higher states of consciousness. That's why I drew this spiral right here, because I think that the purpose of our soul is to it's an upward ascension spiral in our consciousness, and we have the free will to choose to operate either in love or higher states of consciousness or fear. That's the difference between animals and human beings. Animals are kind of just existing based off of instinct, and human beings, we also have instincts, but we have the ability to choose higher states of consciousness, right? Whenever we're operating from an egoic perspective, we see other people or other things as separated from us, and that causes judgment, fear, and hatred. But in reality, we are all just expressions of higher consciousness, expressions of God, and extensions of each other. So again, the invite here is to operate from a higher state of consciousness, to infuse everything that you do with love, okay? I think that's pretty much it. Again, the invite is to operate in love, higher states of consciousness. Oh, and then one more thing that came to me in this download, that don't quote me on this yet, It's still fleshing out, but I think that hell is, if we live on dimension to the third power, then I think that hell is dimension -1, or like -2D, -3D. It's the inverse of the higher dimensions. I think it's like, it can be depicted as a very, like, it's so dense that it's void, and it's, for example, in Stranger Things, they say the upside down world is kind of like a black hole void of anything, and it's trapped, and it can't ascend past, the souls that are dwelling in hell can't ascend past the higher dimensions, because they're still attached to the earthly realms, right? But don't quote me on that. But I think that that's what hell is. I think that hell is like dimension to the negative power. Okay. So again, the invite here is to always try to operate in higher states of consciousness. I really do think that that is our soul's purpose. To take life in stride, and to infuse everything that you do with love, and to view everything as an opportunity to either practice gratitude or surrender. And I think that life is this beautiful cosmic rhythm, and I think that we're just supposed to surrender to it and love each other, love God, love ourselves, and love each other, and then just kind of like surrender to this dance, you know? Anyway, that's it. I hope this makes sense. Let me know if you guys have questions. I love you. Bye.